All right, Chris, right ahead.
Yes, and good evening to everyone across the overseas territories. Happy New Year. First of all, I want to welcome everyone back. Welcome the hundreds of thousands of viewers who are now tuning in across the overseas territories and the not just the overseas territories, but across the diaspora, across the whole region. Tonight we have a very special show. One of the guiding principles of this show is to promote unity and cooperation amongst the leaders and the peoples of the overseas territories. So tonight we are joined by two of the leaders of the overseas territories in the Caribbean, because as we know, there are 9 British overseas territories, 6 of which are in the Caribbean region. So tonight we have the pleasure of our guests being the Honourable Premiers from Montserrat, Honourable Joseph Farrell. Good evening, Premier Farrell.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, moderators. Good evening, everyone.
And joining us in a few will be Honourable Andrew A, the Premier of the Virgin Islands. So tonight's show is going to be titled Unifying the Overseas Territories. So without further ado, we'll start with Premier Farrell. If you could give us a very brief introduction of yourself and what you and your government have been doing.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. I certainly appreciate the offer and the invitation to join you on this program, on this show. I have been following it a few times. I've seen my former speaker on the show as well, so I've been following you. My name is Joseph Farrell. My career spans 30-something years as an agriculturist. I joined political arena in 1996 in Montserrat. We don't have constituencies. We have an enlarged system. So I've been in politics from 1996 until present. I've had my 4th term. I served as opposition member 1996 to 2006, 2009. I served as Minister of Agriculture from 2009, 2004, 2014. I served as Leader of the Opposition from 2017 to 2019 and Premier from November 2019 to present. That is basically my political career up to now.
Okay, thank you. So you're a veteran politician.
Well, I tend to believe that every day it's a new beginning, so I don't rank myself as a veteran. I see every election as a beginning, and so that's probably why I tend to win my elections, because I don't see that continuity, but rather a new beginning.
So you've been a continued. So your entire, just for our clarity or the clarity of the viewers, your system in Montserrat is at large only.
Yes, since the onset of the volcanic crisis in 1995, where people were displaced and we lost significant portion of the population, we had to revert to a one constituency country. So that what happens is that we have 9 elected representatives in Parliament or the Assembly, and each of us, we run at large, and the first past the post, of course, the first 9 gets into Parliament, and that's how it is from 1995 until present.
Okay, so yeah, because that's the thing is that we have to do a civics lesson one day on this, because some islands are just constituencies, some have a hybrid system of constituencies and at large, and some, or yourself in Montserrat, you're just strictly at large. Do you ever see a time that you would move to constituencies?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we would have thought that by now, for the next election, we would have been entering a situation where we had both that hybrid. at large and constituencies. Because of your numbers and the size of the country, you have to have some people running at large, and then have your constituencies. So we can have about 5 constituencies and the 4 members running at large, but that hasn't happened. The Electoral Commission is supposed to be working on it. I'm not sure that they're anywhere near ready for that time. So we may have to go into the same system in the next election. But I envisage us going into a constituency, a hybrid, a constituency and at large system in the future.
Okay. So what we'll do at this point is turn the floor completely over to you, so you can give your presentation with visuals and everything that your lovely staff have helped you produce, and tell the world. Before I go any further, I just want to thank all our media partners across the region. Radio Monserrat is joining us, CBN Radio in Virgin Islands, Cable TV 82 in Bermuda, and Cayman Marl Road in the Cayman Islands. So over to you, Premier. You have the floor.
Good evening again, moderators, and a special welcome to our viewing and listening audience in all the overseas territories and wherever you are listening to this program. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be sharing with you tonight on this program, and I look forward for our interaction as we go through the night. Montserrat, as you know, is one of the 6 British overseas territories in the Caribbean, and we are situated in the Leeward Islands. It's approximately 39.5 square miles in size, and we form a triangle with Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis. In July 1995, the previously dominant Sophia Hills volcano became very active. As a result, the island went through a significant period of devastating volcanic eruptions, which decimated our economy and, of course, our population. We lost the capital, Plymouth, with all its infrastructure, our seaports, our airports, government buildings, hospital. It destroyed the whole town. And so we also lost our housing stock, our livestock, farmlands, in what we now dubbed the unsafe zone, which constitutes roughly 2/3 of the island. Only the north, 1/3 of the island, remains safe, and that's where we are now inhabiting. 2/3 of our population migrated to countries like the UK, America, Antigua, Virgin Islands, and a few more countries within the region. It is now 26 years since the onset of volcanic eruptions on the island. But our population and our economy have not yet recovered from that destruction. Since my government was elected in 2019, our focus has been on making the transition from emergency to development mode. And that is why, because for the past 20 odd years, we were operating at emergency mode. And my government took the decision that we are no longer operating on that mode, but rather we're looking towards development rather than just remaining in emergency mode. And to this, sustainability is critical for us. And as a result of that, we have a number of strategic imperatives to include the development of a mix of renewable energy. And we are looking at all kinds of renewables, be it solar, geothermal, and wind energy. We continue to implement some projects, and these are geared towards facilitating Montserrat sustainable development. We have recently installed a 750 kilowatt solar panel field on island, and before that, we have a 250 kilowatt, giving us a 1 megawatt solar energy on island. Our aim is to become 100% self-sufficient in renewables by the year 2030. That's our aim. It might sound ambitious, but our consumption is very small, and we believe that we can, in fact, turn to renewables and meet our needs, and in addition, have some surplus for economic development, like manufacturing and other things. In preparing the economy for the digital age, the island in October 2020 was once again reconnected to the international fiber grid. And in late 2021, the government of Montserrat entered into an agreement with 2 telecommunication companies to connect some 2,000 homes and all businesses on the island to the fiber optic network. This activity is inextricably linked to our desire to attract investors and expand businesses, thereby stimulating the private sector, which in result will provide employment and also opportunities for advancing the development of this country. This project is clearly symbolic of our thrust and desire to build our economy in this digital age. The redevelopment of air access and connectivity to Montserrat is critical for the island to build a sustainable economy. To this end, we have seen the completion of the resurfacing of the John A. Osborne Airport runway, and work is nearing completion on the construction of a new airport control tower. The construction of a new hospital is a priority for us. Providing access to the best quality healthcare is vital. It's vital to maintaining a healthy population while also reducing the cost of seeking healthcare overseas, which we have been doing now, and it is a catalyst to attracting retirees and others to Montserrat. This is as a means of increasing our population. In this regard, however, the preliminary designs for the Montserrat's new hospital has been completed, and a contract for the completion of the final designs will be awarded sometime this year. With 2/3 of the Montserrat population migrated to other places in the world as a result of volcanic eruption, it is our intention to keep track with Montserratians abroad, the diaspora as we term them, and we look to them for investment and population growth, because this is key. This is a key component to our economic development strategy. And so we expect to reach out to our diaspora members so that they can invest in Montserrat, even if they are working and living overseas. Collectively, the reestablishment of critical farming and fisheries infrastructure as part of our food and nutrition security plan is critical for the peoples of the Caribbean, as we must begin to shift our focus from depending on extra-regional sources for imports to purchasing more from our local and regional neighbors, while at the same time developing our individual agricultural systems. Protection for environment is also another key area of focus for us as a people in Montserrat and in the Caribbean. With a large amount of UK's biodiversity found in the British Overseas Territories, we must begin to leverage international environmental and climate financing to assist our islands in building measures to mitigate against the risk and threat of climate change in these small island states, for which Montserrat and BVI and others are part. Improving our tourism product to include the development of niche ecotourism attraction and is important for us. And we intend to use the buried city, Plymouth, which is in the unsafe zone, the modern day Pompeii, as a selling point to attract tourists to Montserrat. This is key for us because there are no other countries in this part of the world with an active volcano who can use it to the advantage. And we intend to do just that, to use Plymouth, which is now uninhabited, destroyed by a volcano, use it to our advantage to attract tourists and to build our tourism product. I am of the considered view that the Caribbean overseas territories need each other. Let me repeat that. I am of the considered view that the Caribbean overseas territories need each other. Whilst we face our own unique circumstances, we also share many of the same strengths and challenges. We simply cannot confront the realities of our relationship with the United Kingdom, Brexit, or sustainable development and climate change without working closely together and cooperating with each other. This requires an effort and commitment beyond the annual Joint Ministerial Council, which is held in November and every year, or anything that we have seen so far. Perhaps what is lacking is a stronger and more effective partnership between the respective offices of the premiers and the governments. While there are existing Caribbean intergovernment organizations such as the OECS, CARICOM, which Montserrat is a full member, we don't really have such structured platform or mechanism dedicated to discussing matters and issues affecting us as British Overseas Territories, and then working together to resolve the areas of common interest to enable us to speak with one voice. This is absolutely critical for us as a grouping of overseas territories. Understanding how our colonial masters operate, we need to be able to consolidate our efforts and our position so that we can speak with one voice. In closing, I want to salute the organizers for the foresight in developing this program, Territories Talk. It presents a very important forum of information exchange on and between the Caribbean overseas territories, and hopefully also it will grow into a platform which creates the space for us to speak in one collective voice on the issues that are common interest to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. That was a very, very great presentation.
Yes.
What the three of us have been discussing, one of the genesis for this show was that beyond the joint ministerial conferences in November, most people in the overseas territories don't even know that the leaders of the overseas territories actually meet, because there's always, these meetings are always in London. They aren't even actually in the overseas territories. So the peoples of the overseas territories don't get to see other leaders. So we fully agree with what you said there earlier.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be more Congress, more connection.
Yes, this joint ministerial council meets once a year, and that's probably the only time that we as overseas territory leaders actually meet. But I must commend the leaders at the last JMC, which was held in November last year. We were much more coordinated in our approach. As a matter of fact, we met before we went to London in a Zoom meeting to organize our discussion. And when we met in London, we actually met in Yokota, where we delegated the Premier of Bermuda as a spokesperson for us at the introduction of JMC. And he articulated the positions of the OTs in relation to our relationship with the UK and other areas of concern. So this is the kind of forum that I expect us to have, not just at JMC, but during the year, so that we can coordinate our efforts, our consultation, our discussions, and approach with the funding agencies, NGOs, whatever, with a common approach, a common front, speaking with one voice. We cannot continue to fragment our discussions. We are weakening each other by doing so.
Premier, may I suggest something?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Similar with, as you know, Montserrat is the only overseas territory that is a full member of CARICOM. One of the things with prior to COVID, one of the joys of CARICOM was that every 6 months we met in a different island. So not only did the leaders get to meet with each other physically, but the people of those islands got to see Caribbean leadership come into their islands. So I'm strongly of the suggestion that yes, we still have to go to the JMCs, but and I'm sure my co-host will reiterate this another time, but our Caribbean overseas territory leaders should be visiting other islands en masse as a group, because that's the only way the people of those islands get to see unity. Because most people in I grew up in most of the islands, but I've never been to Montserrat as yet, right? So these are things that the small things that matter. So I would just leave that with you to make suggestions to your other premiers.
I second that motion.
You're correct. You're correct because
Here, here.
if you ask a number of our OT members, population, where is Montserrat, they don't know. They can tell you about North America, they can tell you about Miami, they can talk about wherever. But where is Montserrat? Where is Anguilla? Where's Bermuda? Where's BVI? And they don't know. So I totally agree with you that there is need for that kind of exchange where we, of course, we visit each other. And if we do have this forum, OT forums, where we can rotate chairmanship or leadership, that's an idea, and we can bring along with us members from our various countries to those forums. Fantastic idea.
Yeah, I and Chris, we're already getting into the discussions while we're waiting on Honorable Foy to join us. But I'm seeing where, again, whether it's a quarterly meeting, heads of government, leading up to the joint ministerial council, and even facilitating business missions. The whole possibility of encouraging business and economic activity amongst the British overseas territories here in the Caribbean is something that would really be beneficial from, that part, having something like that, having on a regular basis.
Yeah. I would definitely, I'm sure my colleagues are listening. Some of them are listening until we will discuss it. We will discuss in our own forum.
We're giving you the agenda items for the first meeting. All right, while we wait on Chris to get back, because I think we're still trying to troubleshoot our second guest. We'll get into the discussion with you, Premier, as it relates to, I guess, some of the things. Great initiatives, and glad to hear that you guys have basically changed gears and trying to get back up on your feet as it relates to your development. So, really great job. Congratulations to both you and your entire team in terms of the government. It's a team effort.
Yes.
You touched on some of the things that we were concerned about, and that's kind of how we got into asking about what happens outside of the joint ministerial council. But I guess we'll touch on the most current thing as a starting point in terms of the pandemic situation. We were talking a bit before the show started about what's happening on the ground there. So I guess you can go ahead and share with the viewers what's happening and what's also been the most challenging thing for you as a leader during this pandemic situation.
Thank you very much. None of us expected to be handling COVID at this point in time. Very early in 2020, we thought it was just a quick come and go. And so we were not really prepared for the long haul. It is true that COVID has been an experiment for scientists and for others. It's relatively new. And so very little was known about COVID. And so it caught all of us kind of off guard, may I say. We had our first case in March 2020. And let me just backtrack here a little bit. March is what we call our Cultural Heritage Month, St. Patrick, because we celebrate the Feast of St. Patrick. And St. Patrick is probably the only other country outside of Ireland who celebrates St. Patrick's and have a public holiday in St. Patrick's. It's one of our heroes' day. We have the tradition where St. Patrick is celebrated in Montserrat. And basically, we have some Irish connection, and that is part of our history. And so on St. Patrick's, we were celebrating St. Patrick in March 2020. And of course, St. Patrick people, members from diaspora comes to Montserrat from the UK and other places, and they came to Montserrat. And on the 17th of March 2020, we had the first case. We sent our first samples to Trinidad Carver, and it came back positive. It was at the height of that celebration where individuals had invested monies in shows and artists coming in, that sort of thing. But government had to take the decision because we didn't know much about COVID. It's different now. We now know how to handle COVID, but then we didn't know. So we had to take preemptive measures and we locked down. We had a total lockdown. We locked down for about 2 months. We ended up having about 12 cases by the end of July of that year. And after July, August, we had no more cases until February 2021. So we were basically, as I said before we started, Montserrat was one of the few countries in the world who could have boasted in 2021 that it had no active cases of COVID. But at the same time, we still took measures to safeguard population because, as I keep on saying to my population, your health is paramount. It's critical. that we safeguard the health of the nation. The economies can come, but we have to safeguard our peoples. But as leaders, you have to manage between the health of the nation and the survival, the economy of the countries. And that, for me, is the most difficult proposition that you had to manage COVID and manage the economy. They're very difficult because persons are unemployed, they need assistance, you don't have the assistance to support them. People, children are going to school. So, and you have to be able to maintain businesses and still support households. And that, to me, was very, very crucial. We did get some assistance from the UK, fortunately, because we're a colony and we're granting aid. But even then, that was not sufficient to keep people going. But we had to survive on what we had. Then, so we had to lock down, and we actually had no other cases until later in the year, about September. What we did, we introduced a protocol on arrivals, because whereas other countries were abolishing their quarantine rules, we decided that we were going to, if you're coming to Montserrat, if you're vaccinated, you're going to spend 5 days in quarantine. We're going to test you on coming out. And if you're not vaccinated, you're going to be spending 14 days and we test you coming out. And we found that we have picked up a number of cases. As a matter of fact, all of the cases that were positive in Montserrat from September to December were picked up in that protocol, which was working fantastic for us. And so it was good. It worked for us. And that's where we were until the end of December, where we now have some new cases because we had Christmas festival in December. But to shut down the country was absolutely the most devastating thing that you could do to people who were celebrating, who were trying to make a living, and then not being able to support the population, the way they're accustomed to living because they weren't able to work. The cruise industry, of course, we do not depend as heavily as some countries on the tourism sector, but we do have a small sector of population who depend on the villas and tourism and sort of thing, and they have been out of job, out of employment for the past 18 or 20 months or so. But these are some of the harsh realities that COVID has brought to us. Fortunately for us, as all the OTs, we were able to get vaccines in February 2021. We have been trying to vaccinate, but as everywhere else in the world, the vaccine hesitancy is also our biggest problem, where persons are not taking the vaccine. Presently, we have 38.8% of the eligible population is now vaccinated, which is one of the lowest in the OTs. We're still trying to get it up. It's not mandatory in Montserrat, it is your choice, but we're hoping that persons can, because we want to really get back to some level of normality. And the only way we can do that is by having a large percentage of the population inoculated. At least you can minimize the risk of hospitalization and deaths.
Okay. So what's the current situation? You were sharing with us that you do have a current spike in cases that you're managing?
Yes. As of December 28th, we had one active case. But as you know, it was Christmas. Christmas, we have what we call festival or carnival, whatever you want to call it. And of course, at the end of that, by December 31st, we start noticing one case, then 5. And presently, we have 66 active cases with 3 hospitalization. With the exception of the 3 that are hospitalized, the others have from very mild symptoms to some level of severe, some are asymptomatic cases. But it's manageable. Once the hospital numbers rise to a certain level, then we think that we are able to manage what we have at the moment.
Okay. All right. Well, again, we're asking everyone to follow, the protocols. I think it's more or less global in terms of every country. We encourage everyone to wear their masks, wash their hands, practice physical distancing, and as well as getting your vaccine. Eden, over to you for the next. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, what's right there? Sorry. I was saying vaccinated is actually getting vaccinated is absolutely critical. That's our message. That's the message to the region. And the point is that none of us are safe until all of us are safe. So all of us, the message is the same. We must all get vaccinated to protect ourselves, to protect our families, our loved ones, our co-workers, and to get our countries and economies up and moving again.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Premier. I had a question speaking to the very impressive initiatives that you're taking in Montserrat regarding climate action and setting ambitious, sustainable and renewable energy goals for your country. And like we were talking about pre-show, leveraging your size. You have this small size there, so there's great things that you can achieve with having those initiatives like that. How do you see climate action and these types of initiatives towards sustainability taking shape across the OTs, and how can we effectively knowledge share with each other? So if one of us is making an innovation here, then the other one is trying to figure out the same thing. What is a good way for us to be able to streamline communication around this issue that obviously is very important for all of us as small island nations?
Thank you very much. I think all of us as OT leaders have as a goal the whole idea of total renewable energy usage. We have the resources. We have sunlight. We have wind. And some of us have volcano. And we have to maximize the volcano. Whatever threat the volcano poses to us, we have to piggyback on it. So we have use our geothermal energy. And together, we combine these resources, and we are better than most countries in the world. A lot of countries who are talking about renewables do not have sunshine, do not have sunlight. They have wind, but they don't have geothermal. And a lot of them are using their wave energy or their in the sea and that kind of thing, but we don't have to. What we need to do is, as a grouping, is to speak to each other, have a plan, discuss that plan, and move forward with that plan. Because our target is the same, our goal is the same. And so we have to meet together and talk together and move forward with the plan. Presently, for us in this part, in Leeward Islands, we're also members of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And there's a project that's ongoing now to put together a climate change plan and an energy plan, sustainable energy plan. We're also members of OECS, some of us. And there's also that sustainable development plan with the OECS. We're members of CARICOM. And all of us are talking about renewables. All of us are talking about the same thing. But we are fragmented. We need to come together and have one common approach, one common plan, and a strategy to deal with it. And we can achieve it. As OT leaders, we can do it. We can do it. Some of us, of course, have a little more resources than others. But, and then we have to also piggyback on those nations who are large emitters of greenhouse gases and who are not being impacted by the impact of climate change. Right. For us in these parts, we are exposed to hurricanes, earthquakes, floods. They are not. Yeah. So how can we piggyback and get them to finance those mitigating measures, which we need to put in place to protect our shores and our environment from destruction of climate caused by climate change? We need to speak together. And I think this is the beginning of a forum where OT leaders will come together and start marshalling their arts and talking together and putting together a strategy to move forward in terms of our renewable energy strategy.
That is very encouraging, sir. Thank you very much. I mean, I think that it's almost like a scaled down COP meeting but among the leaders of the OTs and the scientists, the advocates, the people who are able to lend some knowledge to this, because I think a regional plan facing this common emergency is absolutely brilliant and necessary.
And we tend to deliver in the region, unlike the COP26 where they talk and at the end of the session it's watered down to nothing.
Right.
We can in fact, all we did is the financing, and we can in fact and we can deliver.
Right.
Yeah. And what you said is so critical, because again, who feels it knows it. And all of the 6 BOTs, they have gone through major hurricanes within the last 10, 20 years. So we know that the climate has definitely changed in this part of the world if people are still in denial. And therefore we have to be proactive in, making sure that we, are prepared, because again, a lot of our disaster response was nowhere near what we've experienced over, the last 2 decades. So with that, now learning those lessons is to now anticipate and make sure that we don't become climate migrants. I think that's the word, Eden.
Yes, yes.
I'm not trying to move
Yeah.
for higher ground. I like the Caribbean. I like the Virgin Islands. And I would very much like to live and die here if nobody else minds. All right. Okay, well, for those that are listening via radio, we got to make sure that we let you know who these voices are, and you are tuned into Territories Talk. One of the hosts, Shaina M. Smith Archer, along with my co host, Eden Hurlston, and Chris Famous out of Bermuda. And with us this evening, we have a special conversation going with the Premier of Monserrat, Honourable Joseph Farrell. We're still hoping that Honorable Andrew A, Premier of Virgin Islands, will join us. He was having some technical difficulties. If not, we will always have a part two, no problem. So again, I don't think we mentioned this in the beginning, but to all of our audiences, what our plan is that we're hoping to actually go through all of the OTs. So again, if you didn't see your country tonight, we wanted to take this in bite size. So every month, as long as they are available, we will be inviting premiers from the other overseas territories until we eventually have a summit. Just, save the
Yes.
date. We don't have a date yet, but save the date. We definitely, as the host of this program, have been talking about the importance of unifying what we're referring to now as our CBOT family, Caribbean British Overseas Territories. So we have an acronym for it. But looking forward to this year in terms of what we're doing. We had a comment from someone, I believe it's from Montserrat, and a past guest, where she said we don't need permission to do this either. It's for the people to basically initiate and make it happen. So we are definitely going to do that, Ms. Shirley, and make sure that, again, as overseas territory citizens, we start to leverage our collective, I would say, resources so that, we can actually do more for our national development. So that's very key. So Premier, I'm going to pivot a little bit. You touched on this, I think, as part of your presentation in terms of the relationship with the United Kingdom. There's been a lot of talk over the last 2 years at different levels in the various OTs in the Caribbean as it relates to the matter of decolonization. And, we'd like to hear your thoughts on that in terms of where Montserrat is at and where you guys are heading to.
Thank you very much. That has been a subject of discussion for ages. And the ultimate goal of all of us as overseas territories is to become politically independent. That is the ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
Presently, we are at different stages in reaching that goal. Some are more advanced than others, but our constitution, all of our constitutions within the OTs, gives us that right to self-determination. It's a right that we can ask for, and we can take it if the people want it. But we must, and we must never decide that we don't want to move from where we are. It's a stage process. And so where we are right now is that we have been set back for the past 30 years, from 1995, 26 years, because of the volcanic crisis. We have found ourselves in a situation where we have become more dependent on the UK for assistance in terms of our budgetary support. And in 1992, we were well on our way to becoming economic self-sufficient. 1992, we had a medical school, we had offshore banks, we had a port, our real estate industry was moving. We were on our way to becoming economic independent, and then move on, because you must become economic independent, and that's our aim right now, to get out of where we are. And so our aim, of course, is to, at some point in the future, for Montserrat to get out of this colonial mentality. For me personally, I'm not a colony in my mind. I see us as a colony advancing towards someplace else, and where we are is no fault of ours. But our aim is to move beyond where we are now and prepare ourselves for the next stage, which is to get out of granting aid and to move from this dependence syndrome into another form of economic dependence. Having reached that level, then you start thinking about political independence. Most of us, when we speak about decolonization, we don't really, at the first instance, we don't really mean becoming politically independent, but we must be able to make decisions of our own without interference from outside. And for some of us, we are basically micromanaging some aspect, and you have to understand why. In my case, for instance, where I term some of the activities in Montserrat being micromanaged by the people who and the old state which says he who calls the pipe, he who plays the pipe, he who plays the pipe called tune. I don't subscribe to that, but sometimes you have to operate until you get where you want to get. But of course, the end game for all of us as OT members of the state is to get out of this colonial mentality and this colonial state into a state of independence. There's no if and but about that. But we have to we are all at different stages right now. And I know some can get there before others, but we all aim to get there eventually.
Okay. Awesome. All right, Eden, next question.
We have a question from the comments here from Mr. Bilika Samamba, I think from here in Cayman. What kind of training does Montserrat provide to civil servants to ensure that they participate meaningfully in policy formulation, development, and legislation?
Very good question. Thank you very much for that question, sir. Based on our constitution, the public service falls directly under the auspice of the governor. And that is the peculiar arrangement we have in our OT constitutions, where elected representative does not have control or authority over the public servants. But in truth and in fact, we do offer training. The deputy governor, who is responsible directly for the public servants, organized in-service training. We do attachments. We do have TCs whose role is to fill some gaps initially, and also to transfer skills to persons on island. So we do assign individuals to them for them to transfer skills to them. So we do internal training, in-service training for public servants. And of course, the government of Montserrat also finance studies at home for public servants who wish to do first degree, second degree studies. We do finance them for the work and study from home. And annually, we provide us financial assistance for them to do that, and also provide time for them off work for them to study and take exams. So we do support our public servants in getting higher education and getting better. In terms of legislation, I'm not sure there's much done in terms of getting public servants, especially the lower level public servants, to understand the system. Senior managers do understand the process for getting legislative framework in place, because they do cabinet papers. They understand that from cabinet to parliament. So they do take part, the senior managers do take part in that. The lower levels, I think we need to step up our game to get more of our public servants involved in the legislative framework, and they can understand it better, so that at least, because they are, the success of any government is a successful public servant. And if you don't have that, then you're going to fail as a government. And so we need to provide that kind of leverage to our lower level public servants, our mid management, that they can have an appreciation for that as well.
That is very comprehensive. Thank you for that. And I mean, and that really seems like a good preparation in whatever the future of your country might hold, of Montserrat might hold. And as far as dealing with independence, that is something that I think comes up is, have we prepared to run ourselves? And you know what I mean? It's a question kind of slash fear among people when they contemplate becoming an independent nation. And I think that kind of, I mean, just you talking about that you have one-on-one sort of mentorship to bring people into the civil service. I mean, that is something that is lacking. For instance, it's a gap that is here in Cayman. And there's a lot of younger people who have a lot of drive and talent, and they get put off by not being able to find their footing in the civil service, or being able to really make a difference because of a lack of such comprehensive programs like that. So that's again very encouraging to hear that kind of answer about the training for your civil service. I'm just adding on to that point regarding training, as you mentioned, your sustainable tourism initiatives and your renewable energy initiatives. How are you? We time and time again, it's come up on this show about the brain drain that is happening. Our inability to keep a hold of our most talented, to keep them at home, to bring our talented, university-educated, homegrown kids back here to apply their skills. What kind of training are you offering as you have put your development plan into place here and get that going to get younger people involved in those sustainable tourism initiatives and the renewable energy initiatives? What kind of training are you offering in that regard?
Thank you very much. The question is twofold. In terms of training, we recognize that our aim is to become 100% renewables. So we have just awarded scholarship for someone to go off to study, to look at how do you integrate renewables into your grid, your energy grid. So they are doing that now. We have somebody studying right now, and we just got him a scholarship. But what we plan to do from our scholarship listing is to ensure that we just don't give scholarship for the sake of scholarship, but that we look at areas of development, and out of those areas, you decide you're going to award scholarship for persons to pursue studies in these areas so they can come back and work in those areas. And that is exactly what my government has been doing for the past 2 years, not just to give scholarship, but to scrutinize the scholarship listing, to determine how it fits into our development plan and award scholarship according to that, so that with the expectation that those students will come back and work in the areas that you are sending them to train in. The second point about the brain drain, it's difficult because what we find in our small countries is when persons leave and go overseas, they're exposed to much broader areas and entertainment and other things. And so they kind of don't want to come back into this sluggish environment, for a better word. Also, what we have in our countries, it's a you and us, or us and them mentality. And I would want us to be able to break away from that us, the person who would have left us 26 years ago, who might be willing to come back. Some of them, when they return, are not welcome into the environment because they are just coming back. Right. And the sooner we can break out of that mentality, it's the better it is for us, will be for us, to attract those young brains back to Ireland to contribute to development. A few have returned and have left because of the same thing, where they're not accepted, because the people who did not leave the country thought, well, you just come back, how can you come and control or dictate to us? So we have to get away from that mentality in order to encourage our brains to come back. Other countries are attracting them, and we must be able to hold them. In many cases, we talk about salaries, but salary is not always the only factor that will allow people to come back. The environment must be conducive for them to stay. The conditions that you offer, non-monstrations, for instance, we don't want to offer a returning monstration similar conditions, but we don't mind offering somebody else everything else. And these are the problems that we have, which we have to fix if we are going to attract natives back to our country to develop our economies and our populations.
So true. And I mean, that is exactly really what's at play here. I think that when I talk to a lot of students who are studying abroad, a big issue is that they feel like it's easier for them to take what they're learning and innovate with it abroad, whereas when they come back here, they're like you said, either you're not welcome because, oh, now you're foreign educated and you've gone and, this and that, or there's no niche here for them to practice what it is they've learned. And even people who've gone off on government scholarships come back here and find themselves saying, okay, well, I studied all these things to start a trailblazing career in Cayman. Where's my job? And then before you know it, they're just working in an office somewhere and not applying their talents. Sure. I mean, how do we do we need a university, a different kind of, more of a push on higher education here so that it can be offered and we send people around to different islands, or do we have a guided program? Because it is, of course, their freedom to stay in whatever country it is they feel most comfortable, most welcome, and most able to apply themselves. But what kind of attitude shifts need to change as well overall?
We need to see ourselves as one Caribbean. And we need to see ourselves, whether you're Cayman Islander or whether you're Monserrat, once you return, you are part of us.
Right.
And we need to see you in that light. The moment we start seeing you as outsiders, then we're not going to change that mindset. It's basically a mindset that we have to change, to accept each other for who they are and what they can offer. You're correct, though, that persons would have gone overseas and would have had exposure, a much wide exposure, and when they return, what they can contribute is limited because of our size. Let me, for instance, draw on your medical practitioners. A doctor in the United Kingdom, 100 patients per day, 15 different kind of diseases. You come to small island like mine, and a doctor here, you see one patient with a certain disease, and maybe 3 patients for the year, specialized diseases. So these are some of the limitations that we have. What we need to do is to be able to, especially in the field of our medical practitioners, is to get them attachment overseas.
Right.
Whether a sabbatical, a 2-month sabbatical, 3-month sabbatical. So at least they can improve their skills, have the exposure, and then return, knowing fully well that they're spending 8 months in Montserrat and 4 months someplace else. We need to become innovative in holding our population at home. We cannot continue business as usual. It's not going to help us, and we're going to lose them. As a matter of fact, you would know, as I do, that the UK is now introducing an immigration point system.
Yeah.
And I see that as a means of further depleting.
Right.
Because they're paying persons who are highly skilled better salaries. And the moment I saw it, I said to myself, this is another means of depleting the brains of our small islands, which already we don't have much of. So what can we do? We have to find ways and means. We have to become innovative in attracting our people back home and encourage them to stay. Whatever it takes, we have to do it because we're not going to develop without them.
I 100% agree with you, sir. Very, very, very true words. We have some questions coming in from our viewers here. Montserrat was always an agricultural island. Both of us worked there a long time ago. What are the plans to stimulate the agricultural sector?
Thank you very much. And things have changed, let me put it that way. Agriculture have changed. The method of agriculture has changed. Modes of brand have changed. The population have changed. When that person was probably working in Montserrat, we had a population of older persons who were committed to farming. What we need in the farming sector, and I'm speaking as agriculturists now, is more modern techniques in producing our foods. We can no longer expect young people to go out and operate in the sun for 8 hours a day. It's not going to happen. We have to start using technology. And I've said to students at school when I used to go to school to help out, what we need to do, what young people are very versed with their computer or their phones. What we need to do is to start introducing shade houses, greenhouses, have a computer in the office, because I want to sit in my office and do all my work for my farm in my office. I put my fertigation plan, I put my planting plan, my planting schedule, my house regime, everything in my computer. This is the only way that we're going to attract young people into the field. So we need to invest in modern technology for agriculture. The old system is not going to work anymore. We must begin to invest, serious investment in agriculture, new technology, and to get young people involved if we're going to sustain our agriculture sector and feed ourselves. Clearly, it's not business as usual. You're muted, Hudson. You're muted.
Sorry about that. And you're working on some ways to integrate that and reinvigorate some agriculture in Montserrat.
We just have at secondary school we have at least two greenhouses in the school. We just returned from university a agriculture teacher who is working with the students there, and we do have a couple of young farmers who are experimenting in that area. I know my Minister of Agriculture is very keen to have the sector moving, and I'm working along with him to see how best we can include some new technologies into the system. That's the only way, and I'm working with him to see how best we can do that. It does need some financing. I'm willing to work along with him to see how best we can finance some areas to get the system, get the sector moving. And we cannot continue to produce everything we need. And again, that is where the intra-regional and our relationship between OTs come in. how can we work together to determine which crops should I grow and which crops should Cayman grow and which crops should BVI grow,
Right.
and what can I buy from BVI, what can I buy from BVI, what can BVI buy from Monserrat, so that at least I don't try to grow everything here, but rather we do some niche crops depending on our environmental condition and buy from each other and sell to each other. That is the way we have to go. And this is where, again, the relationship between the OTs, the coordination between the OTs comes into play. We have to work together as a group.
Absolutely. We have another question here from Tarina Malone. Oh, real quick, I need to say good night to the BVI CBN audience. And thank you once again to CBN Radio for carrying the show and expanding the conversation across the region and the OTs. And good night to that audience there. We have a question here. What initiatives do you have in place for returnees when you have Monserratians come back home?
Very good question. I am very keen to have Monserratians return. And I believe that we need to put in place incentives for Monserratians, not only retirees, because presently, when I came into office, there's what we call a standing SRNOs for returning Monserratians. You can return and you can bring your personal belongings free, you can have a cars free. What I'm working on at the moment, and this is not yet policy, it's in the framework, and I can speak to it because I've said it to Monserratians already. What we're trying to do is to get Monserratians not to return when you retire, but to invest while you're overseas. And so we are putting in place some new measures, some incentives for Monserratians who want to invest in Monserrat, in home construction, retrofitting homes, whatever it is, and so they can access these concessions for them to invest in Monserrat. We also encourage them to come home. Now that we have fiber optic, where we are connected to the world, why not come home and do business from home? We have here a remote workers program, which we launched last year, where persons who wish to come to Monserrat and spend 6 months here can come to Monserrat and work from home. Monserratians overseas can come home and from their companies or firms, wherever they are, and do the same thing home. You come home and you work for 6 months, and you pay taxes wherever you're working from. You don't have to pay taxes here, you pay it overseas, but at least it's one form of our tourism sector, or tourism product that we're offering for person to come home. So these are just a few of the areas that we have in enticing Monserratians to come home. Of course, we do advertise our jobs in the public service and private sector, and I would love for more Monserratians overseas to apply and fill some of this position. I would love. But what I find is that sometimes they just don't, for whatever reason. And again, maybe go back to what I said about the acceptance of our people when they return. But I do want Monserratians to understand that jobs that are advertised in government of Monserrat is also available to them as well, wherever they are across the world.
That is very good. It's very important to have those programs in place and welcome our people back home. I'm really learning a lot from the approaches that you are taking in your nation. We have another. Now you spoke to this in your presentation. He might have missed this here, and I think he is. Oh, hold on. He is coming from Bermuda, I believe. It says Bermuda used to have a vibrant tourism industry, and what will be done by the government to revitalize the industry. And I guess he's speaking to what you were talking about with Monserrat. In your presentation, again, you were touching on tourism. So I don't know if there was any other things you would like to touch on regarding tourism in Monserrat.
As I said, we are not, our economy does not depend solely on tourism, or a major portion of our revenue doesn't come from tourism, but we do have a small percentage of the population. And we do encourage persons to come to Monserrat. What we think we need to do, what we are doing is getting away from selling the island as sand and sea. It doesn't work anymore. We hope to capitalize on our environment, our biodiversity. These are the areas that we need, that we are hoping, that we are in fact emphasizing for our tourists. No longer you come in and go on the seashore and bathe on the sea. No, that's not what we're offering you. We're offering you clean air, unpolluted air, free environment that's clean drinking water, because you don't have to use bottled water in Monserrat. You can drink water from your tap in Monserrat. An environment, our crime rate is very low. So these are the things that we're offering tourists. come to Montserrat because you are protected. You're not harassed. Crime is very low. You can leave your cars open. You can walk the streets. These are the kind of things that we are selling now. No longer just come to Montserrat because we have great sand and beaches. No, we are offering tourists, and they're coming. We do have some day tours. We used to get we used to have cruise ships. We haven't had any for the past 18 months, as you know, because of the pandemic.
Right.
But we do have just before the pandemic, annually we have cruise liners, some smaller cruise liners, because we're not open to those mega ships.
Right.
We facilitate smaller cruise liners, 300, 400 passenger cruise liners comes in for day trip and some sort of thing. Of course, we don't have very large hotels at the moment, but we have a lot of guest houses and you know, a lot of not guest houses which people can stay in. So we do have, and for instance, 2020, incidentally, our tourist arrivals was up to 20,000, the highest since 1995. Of course, it dropped because it dropped as a result of the pandemic. But 20,000 in any 1 year tourists come to Montserrat it's a landmark for us, and we hope to get back there as soon as the pandemic is behind us.
That's excellent. And the thing is, experiential, the tourism or traveling for an experience, I think, is what people are more after than, you know, just go to another playground where I'm going to get drinks on the beach. I think that those days, like you said, that's gone, and it doesn't benefit the cultural integrity, I believe, of especially destinations that have so much culture to share, a story to share. You have that a devastating event in 1995 to educate folks of. It has scientific aspects to it, that has cultural aspects to it, that has encouraging and inspirational aspects to it as far as coming back from that. And I think that that's what people are more after right now, not the large hotel, not the large resort, but a real experience. So I think that really sounds well balanced. We have a comment here talking about salaries needing to improve. Nurses are on high demand worldwide. This is one critical group that needs attraction. I think that is true the world over right now.
It is true, and we are cognizant of that. As a matter of fact, my colleague premiers would recall that at the just concluded JMC, that I raised the concern about the loss of nurses that we are experiencing in these parts to North America and the UK. We understand that the salaries are small, and I can say for certain that what we just concluded a financial aid mission with the London team, and the Minister of Health and Education. We put forward a proposal because we recognize that if we are to retain our nurses and teachers, the salaries need to be looked at. And so presently we have picked out those three categories: nurses, teachers, and I think police, as three categories of workers that we have to start looking at rebalancing their salary scales to make them more attractive for them to stay. I'm not sure that will keep them, but we're hoping that will. If salary is the issue, then certainly we recognize that, and we are working on that. And I'm certain that although we're talking about general salary increase, we believe that these three categories will be given preference over all others. So the person who asked the question, be assured that we are working on that for Montserrat.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Premier, we have quite a bit of questions coming in, and we do value your time. I don't know how much more time you can afford us tonight in terms of answering a couple more. Probably won't get through all, but definitely I think persons are very much intrigued with this conversation. I'm wanting to know a lot more about what's happening, you know, at this executive level, so to speak. You know,
I want to talk all night. I don't want to stop.
Country to run, Eden. He has.
I know about you Caribbean people. You know.
So, Premier, how much more of your time? So we can.
You tell me. I have a curfew on. I told the police that I'll be out of in my office after 8. Because curfew is 8 o'clock.
Okay.
I told them already, so I'm protected. I'm not breaking the curfew. I told the commissioner I'll be out, so ask for excuse.
Okay.
knows that.
Oh, well, that's good. So because we don't want you to be in any trouble tomorrow.
No,
Most definitely.
tomorrow morning they put me on the radio, say I break the curfew. I told him not to get it. So
Yeah, that's not gonna be very well. But you're doing a good walk, so I think they can give you a pass on this one. All right, so we'll run through a few more. And again, to our audience on YouTube, Facebook page, Cayman Marl Road, really appreciate you guys tonight and all from all the OTs. So we'll try to get as many in as we can over the next 20-30 minutes and then start to wrap up. I am actually still in the background trying to get on for this. We are a dedicated bunch here. So hopefully he gets on before the benediction. If not, we'll definitely reschedule and have him on at some point. All right. So next question up was person's asking, do the OTs have honorary councils to help interact with each other? So I don't know if this might be in the UK or
okay. Yeah, in the overseas territories, all of us as we have what we call commissioners, like in the OC in the OT in the OECS. I think Anguilla, Montserrat, BVI. I think yes. We have commissioners talk from time to time on issues. Every day have a meeting. They coordinate. Like Christopher from BVI and Debbie from here. They do speak. In the UK, all of us have overseas representative in the UK. We all have our offices in the UK, so we do have, and they do meet. The reps do meet on a regular basis. They used to represent us at Brexit talks, and OCOD, OCDA. Now they meet at Yokota on a regular basis, and that's where the OTs they meet and strategize, speak to us, and talk to the UK, and then get back to us. So there's a two-way communication between us. All the OTs, I believe, have representative in the UK. Some have more lavish office than others, but never mind. But we do have those representatives in the UK who represent our interests. We do.
Okay. All right. I think we had another question that came in via WhatsApp, and this is about the UN Decolonization Committee in terms of how much contact, I guess, again, with Montserrat's specific situation, I guess you can speak to and what's been happening there. I know there were meetings. We actually talked about this on the show late last year, where Chris actually, I think, was the one that attended the meeting on behalf of Bermuda. What's the engagement like on your end?
Yes, we do have contacts with the Decolonization Committee. As a matter of fact, they were in Montserrat. The committee was in Montserrat in 2020, where they met with us. They had a meeting in Dominica last year. We couldn't go because of COVID, but we do meet with them. They do talk to the OTs to find out where they are, because their aim is to ensure that the UK put in place mechanisms and processes to ensure that the countries move out of the colonization listing. It's a matter for us as individuals. As I said in the previous course, some of us are further on than others. I know, for instance, one of my colleagues recently got a statement from the committee. But we do talk to them. They do talk to us. We understand our rights within the Article 2773, and the UK understand that as well. So yes, we do speak to the Decolonization Committee from time to time, and I know they have annual meetings which they invite OT members to.
Okay. All right, we're scrolling through here, Eden. I don't know if you touched on the one about the returnees. I think you guys were speaking about this earlier.
We did, yeah. We're here at Miss Glenda Peel's comment and question.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go.
This one is coming from Glenda Peel on Facebook. Honourable Premier Farrell spoke about existing incentives for returning Monserratians. Is there anything in place for the retention of current residents? I think you touched on that as well. Not that I'm in support, but could it be that is the reason for seemingly unwelcome attitude of which we spoke earlier toward returnees? Not enough opportunities for those at home so that then there's a stink attitude toward those returning home?
That's a very valid question, and it has been raised by residents who did not leave the island during the volcanic crisis. And it's still a question that's being asked: what have you given to us?
Right.
Unfortunately, there's no specific incentive. What we did, for instance, for young persons, government provide, wherever possible, provide land at a dollar per unit, providing they can source a mortgage. And so we are, as an effort to encourage young persons to own their own home in Montserrat, we provide lands for them so that they can do that. There was a time when we had finances to allow to grant them some grants for housing. We don't have that now, but we still provide land space for persons who can source a mortgage, because land to buy land and to build a house, it could be very, very expensive. So what we do is to provide that land for some young persons, and then they would source the mortgage. And once they source the grant, once they source the mortgage and start construction, we transfer the title, the land, to them. This is probably the only incentive that we have at the moment for persons living on the island, regrettably. And it's a matter of concern. It has been raised several times, and it's something that we need to work on. Thank you very much for that question.
I think, again, that is a common thread of what is being faced by all of the OTs and just throughout our region. And it is time to innovate. I saw something that was a very simple statement. It said it's that time has come to either evolve or repeat. And it's almost, I feel like it's something that is happening among us there, some short, potent words. We have Mr. Joseph Jackman. What progress on the ferry? We need it badly.
I laugh because I think I know Joe Jackman. Jackman, the ferry could become a contentious issue at times. The ferry was a source of transport between the island, between Montserrat and Antigua. Unfortunately, when the pandemic started in 2020 about, we had a ferry, borders were closed. We were paying a ferry to sit in Port Little Bay every day, not transporting anybody, because our borders are closed, the Antigua borders are closed, as most borders were closed. And of course, my government made that hard decision not to renew the contract for the ferry in September of 2021. Clearly, persons were not traveling. International travel was disrupted. And it just did not make economic sense to have a ferry sitting in water, not transporting anyone. It just did not make sense. And I know the importance of the ferry to Montserratians. I know it very well. I know the importance of the ferry for our diaspora members who want to come home for Christmas and St. Patrick's. I know it. And I'm not naive to the fact that it's an important means of transport for all of us. It's cheaper, and you can bring your luggage with you. But in terms of economics, it just didn't make sense then. We have an access strategy, which includes. Sorry. Sorry, I just slipped out. Sorry for that.
I got you. Go ahead.
I'm out now. I have to get back in.
No, you're not hearing us?
I'm hearing you, but I'm not seeing you now. I'm back at stream. I'm seeing something that's not ours.
Oh no, we see you on here.
I'm not seeing you. Get started. Let me get started again.
Uh-oh.
Live stream. Let me get on. Let's get this. One moment. Let me just get back in. See if I get back in.
Okay.
I'm not seeing you. I'm hearing you. I'm not seeing you. I'm not seeing you. Sorry, Mr. Jackman, for that interruption.
Okay, so let's do this really quick because if you log back in, then what I'll do,
I'm trying to
hopefully
log.
you,
You want to log back in? Log back in. I
yeah,
can log
log back
out. Let me log out and log in again.
in. Go ahead, sir. So Eden
Let me
will wait
just
for him to do that. But so far, really great show tonight. A good way to kick off
fantastic.
the new year.
And thanks to for everyone who's tuning in and provide these questions. We have hit some great viewership tonight. And thanks to Virgin Islands CBN Radio FM 90.9, Bermuda Channel 82, Montserrat, ZJB Radio, and Cayman Marl Road for carrying the show and helping unite and inform our region, the OTs. This is amazing. It's so good to be back, Shaina.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
We missed everybody actually. Let me
Oh,
see if the Premier is back. Premier, can you hear us?
I'm hearing you. I'm not seeing you, to be
You
honest.
still not seeing us? Okay,
No.
I'm going to remove you and let you log back in.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we are hoping and praying. While we are waiting for Premier Farrell to join us, we actually received apologies from Premier Foy, and he's asked that we reschedule. They had done testing on their computers this afternoon, but apparently when they changed locations, it would not cooperate.
wow.
So we've been basically doing that for the last hour. So we do apologize to viewers again that he was not able to join us, because I am sure this conversation would have been even more vibrant and informative, because that is what we aim to do. And again, to try to bring unity, or not trying, we are working on bringing unity to our overseas territory family.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry for that, Mr. Jackman, for the interruption in your question. As I said, we have an access strategy which includes a ferry, some air access. Presently, we are negotiating to have twin service for St. Patrick's some days per week. We are hoping to have a ferry, hopefully, if the borders are open by end of March, on a part-time basis, not full-time. And hopefully in 2023 thereabout, we might consider returning a scheduled ferry service to the island. But until then, we have two twin services. We're actually working with one airline out of St. Martin we have two trial services, and we are negotiating for work on a twin service from March, St. Patrick's to Montserrat. We had it in December for a few days, and we want to have it in March. And of course, if the numbers are significant, we may want to charter a ferry for March. And then in 2023, we may consider a scheduled ferry service to the island again. I hope this answers your question and your concern, sir.
Okay. And Premier, while you are touching on St. Patrick's Day, I was doing a little research while preparing for the show and was curious about the coat of arms on the flag. And I read about, it has significance in terms of the connections to Ireland. So I called a friend of mine who migrated here because of the volcano. And I was like, so this is why St. Patrick's Day is such a big deal, and it's called the Emerald Isle. I was like, oh.
Yes, the Emerald Isle is part of it, but it has more significance to us than just St. Patrick. Of course, St. Patrick is a patron saint. We do have some more churches, especially it's a Catholic, and it's Catholic, and we do have some Catholic villages and St. Patrick Church. But for us, it was at that time, March 1776, 70 thereabout, where we had similar to most countries, OTs, where you had slave rebellion. There was a certain feast that was planned for St. Patrick's, and some slaves who became very ambitious wanted to destroy the masters, and so there was that slave rebellion, and they were caught, and they were beheaded, of course, as the myth says, as thing says. So we celebrate St. Patrick as one of our national heroes day, not just St. Patrick's, but it's a combination of both.
Right.
Wow. Okay. Well, see, there you go. I got even more history now because I I asked about it. That's awesome. See, that's the type of things now that we need to learn from a Caribbean history standpoint. Again, in terms of understanding the origins of all our OTs, and we have such, magnificent stories that have shaped basically our heritage over the years. So that is great. All right, I think we have one more comment coming from our audience, and it is about the status of the geothermal project. I think you touched on this in your presentation.
Yes, I did. And my government is very enthusiastic in getting renewables. And as I said, geothermal is one of those elements, one of those arms of our total renewable package that we are working on. Over the past, presently we have two cap wells. My understanding is that they can produce between 1.5 and 2 megawatts of
Wow.
geothermal energy. They're
Mhm.
capped for about 7 years now. We have been, since I got into office, my team and I have been working. Presently, we are talking to two potential investors who are showing interest in geothermal. And well, geothermal by itself is not going to work. We know they want to add other things to it. I don't want to get into that detail now. But there's a move towards us utilizing those wells as part of our total renewable energy mix.
Okay. So you're currently,
Fantastic.
so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're currently using electricity produced from the volcano heat?
No, we're currently we have a 1 megawatt solar energy feed to our grid. So
Okay.
we're currently using solar energy from solar
Okay.
that we have. Right.
Okay. But no fossil fuels.
No. Yeah, no. It's a combination. We are still using fossil fuel,
Okay.
but this is the first phase. The 1 megawatt of solar is the first phase of getting us
Okay.
into that, out of
Okay.
that fossil fuel usage into renewables.
Okay. Okay, awesome. And then the geothermal then will complement the remaining,
Yes,
and that's where you're saying you want to go 100% renewable energy.
exactly.
Awesome.
That is
Um,
very impressive.
very. So we're gonna take a page of their book.
Yeah.
No, we have to learn from you as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
We all need to
So
learn from each other.
There are things you're doing that we need to know. So I want
yeah,
to hear Premier of Fahie and others talking about what they're doing, because we need to talk. We need to
yeah.
Yes.
talk these
We
things.
definitely we're gonna work on that summit. So we have that knowledge exchange, especially amongst the subject matter experts across the different territories.
Correct.
So that, again, like you're saying, we need to learn from each other, and not just learn from mistakes, but learn about the things that you guys are successful about, because that is how that interdependence is what is going to accelerate our move towards independence, because economically we will accomplish more together.
So true.
Because things like, I think Eden touched on this earlier, the whole matter of food security. We
Mhm.
need to have a summit just to talk about how are we going to feed ourselves for the next 10, 15 years, because again, we see what happens because of globalization. We are totally dependent on other people for, let's say, 98% of our food. And that's not a good position to be in. So
And it was conspicuously missing from COP26 discussion as well. Food is one of the top issues for sustainability, and it was not discussed at the conference.
Well, it is the net importers that have to focus on food imports. The exporting countries don't care about it. It is us
Right.
who
Yeah.
import 90% of our food. And what bothers me, what opened my eye even more, is when at the peak of the crisis, when we were not allowed to import essential pandemic items.
Yeah, we saw that too.
They put a ban on it and we couldn't get them. What happens if there's an outbreak of another war or something? How can we feed ourselves when the country say we're keeping our food for ourselves? But we must begin to focus on our food security and our nutrient security in the region. We must. And one of the things that we're doing is that we're importing all kinds of food which contribute to all our NDCs, our NCDs, our non-communicable diseases. So obesity and diabetes are on the increase because of what we're eating, or healthy. We're not eating healthy. And so we have to start educating our population and start producing our own food so that we can, in fact, have a healthy population.
Definitely.
And it reduces the cost of our healthcare systems, and our healthcare budget and everything else. So we need to do that. And it is important that the region start looking at a strategy for food security. Seriously, not just talk, but seriously.
Definitely. So we had a comment and a question that came up where Esther Whitley said, all the territories have highly educated and talented people all over the world, but we don't appear to have a vibrant exchange of this energy and talent amongst our overseas territories, and seem to seek and harness these talents for outside the territories. What can we do to change that? So I think we've been touching on this in different ways tonight, in terms of how we attract um, the diaspora back home, and then for those that can contribute from abroad, that we create those forums and avenues for them to be able to inject ideas and their talents. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, we presently we have a cadre of what we call technical cooperation personnels, and they are here to fill a certain skills gap that exists within many public service.
Mm-hmm.
What I expect to see from them, and I said it earlier, is for them to transfer those skills to locals. And I know some countries are very, some of my OT colleagues, countries are very good at that, and making sure that your own takes over positions when when you bring in some people to work. I know at least two of my colleague countries, and I think that's what we need to do. We need to bring them in, use them to transfer those skills to locals, and
Mm-hmm.
then repatriate them. We are grateful. We appreciate them, but you have to build your own local resource, human resource, and that is one way of doing it. We have to do it. Of course, we have talents across the world, but so often as a people, we wait for government to come to you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us don't make offers, don't make approaches as nationals of all various countries. We simply sit back and say, "Oh, the government has not approached me." Why not approach government and say, "I have this idea. How can we work together?" And I know that some governments and some premiers and officers do push people aside. I'm not one of those push aside, but I listen to everyone. And if the idea sounds good, let's run with it. Let's see how best we can go with it. I don't make promises, but let's see how best we can develop the idea into something to benefit all of us. We just cannot shun our people anymore. But people, our nationals overseas, do speak to us. Let's have a conversation, and let us see how best we can harness the resource that we have. Use your talent for the good of our people and yourself. Basically, that's what you have to do.
Awesome. All right. Well, Eden, I think we have come to the top of our hour and a half, and we have fit quite a bit in tonight. I hope, again, a lot of information was shared. If you tuned into the middle of this, you definitely have to go back this weekend and watch it in its entirety. Um, Honorable Farrell gave us so much to think about, and we are so happy to hear he is on board with the mission of Territories Talk.
Yes.
To unify the CBOTs, we're calling ourselves now, the Caribbean British Territories, and making that move. So, Premier,
Let me just share this bit of history with you from somebody just sent me my WhatsApp.
okay, go
Um,
ahead.
um, Good evening. With Territories Talk, the suggestion we having close to ties with each OT. There used to be a council where meetings were held in the various territories. Not sure what happened to the gathering. So
Wow.
apparently there was something that used to happen. Exactly what you're talking about, but nobody knew what happened to
Before,
it. It failed by the
yeah,
wayside. Failed by the
okay,
wayside. Just
all
came
right,
into it from a friend of mine on the
okay.
yes.
All right. Well, Premier, we're gonna give you the floor to give your closing remarks. I wanted to ask you about the membership in the CARICOM, but we're gonna save that for another time because I know you will be back.
Yeah, but let me just membership of the CARICOM. I think that the OTs need to, and again, Montreal is a full member of CARICOM and OECS.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other members are associate members. How can my membership be used to rally support for the overseas territories, even if they're not full members of CARICOM?
Mm-hmm.
I know that each CARICOM member have bilateral arrangements with the United Kingdom and other countries, and so some of them are reluctant, and I know for incidents which I'm not going to now, they're reluctant to take a stand on certain issues. But as a member of CARICOM, I'm in a position
Mm-hmm.
to push my point for the OTs that I am a full member and this is what I'm representing. This is my point I want to push forward. What support can I get from you? So
Yeah.
we need to use that
Okay.
leverage as an OT member, as an OT member and as a CARICOM member and an OECS member to use that leverage to help get support from CARICOM and OECS as well. Okay,
Awesome.
just start making that.
Okay. Great.
Okay, to me, it was certainly a pleasure being with you. I certainly enjoyed. I'm not tired as yet, but it's no past my curfew hours. But I truly enjoy the session with you. I think it's long overdue. It's something that that we need in the OT. We need to, as I said, we need to meet together on a regular basis. And I know my colleagues know where I'm coming from, because we have had some discussions. We do have and it's not a secret, we do have a WhatsApp chat group that we talk to. So at least we're getting there. This is not a secret anymore. So we do, but we need to be more in terms of be more strategic in our approach. We know who we're dealing with. What are those things that we have in common? How do we tackle climate change? How do we tackle decolonization? How do we tackle more development aid for the OTs? What strategy must be used to make a case to whoever for that? We need to have that position, and we cannot do it individually. We must do it collectively. And so I look forward for your forum, whatever we have it, and for us to come together at some point. And I'm challenging, I use this forum to challenge my colleagues for us to be more proactive in moving forward in terms of consolidating our position and articulating those positions that we can move forward, which can benefit ourselves, our people, and the rest of the Caribbean. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity for sharing.
Well, again, thank you on behalf of my other co-host, Premier, for joining us tonight. Again, for those that may have tuned in and missed that, we did receive apologies from Premier Foy. Unfortunately, they had some technical difficulties we weren't able to overcome. But we will definitely reschedule him and have him here on the Territories Talk as we continue to talk about unifying our Caribbean British overseas territories, because we know that it is in our unity that we have greater strength. So, Eden, go ahead and acknowledge our great people, our media sponsors or supporters, please. And
I want to say that you're the first guest, sir, that we have had on the show who has been solo, where we weren't kicking around a discussion among a few panelists. Generally, we have 2 or 3, and you handled the hot seat admirably with fantastic class. I thank you very much for fielding all these questions and being so comprehensive in your answers, and really lending some inspiration and information to all of our viewers tonight. And I mean, I learned a lot. So thank you for that. Just fantastic to have you on the show, and I really hope to have you back again for more of these sessions. It's amazing. I want to give a huge thanks, and before I forget, a happy birthday to Mr. Gary Ebanks, who contributed the new music for our opening for our promotional video. His birthday was yesterday, and huge thanks for lending us Tail Burner, some real Caribbean music to put on our promotional video, and a huge thanks to all the viewers who are tuning in from everywhere, and to Virgin Islands CBN Radio FM 90.9, Bermuda Channel 82, Montserrat, ZJB Radio, and Cayman Marl Road for carrying the show and carrying the conversation throughout the OTs and throughout the region. We're just going to grow from strength to strength with discussions like this happening, and I'm so inspired to be a part of this. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Good night. Good night, everyone.
Good night. We will see everyone in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Happy 2022, everybody.